Hello, friends. Welcome to this mental health town hall, brought to you by Silicon Slopes and powered by Promise2Live, Brandy, Vega, and Promise2Live. I am Dr. David Morgan. I am the Director of Mental Health Awareness for Silicon Slopes. I'm a licensed psychologist, local in Utah County. And we're so excited to be able to bring these events to you every month where we can talk about these conversations, really just keeping the conversation going regarding mental health. I was talking to one of my new friends today and how oftentimes things happen, thank you, things happen that scare us and surprise us, and then we pay attention to it for a little while, and then we get busy and stop paying attention to it. And mental health can be one of those things. But as we continue to have these conversations, hopefully it's something that just gets in our daily thoughts about being aware of our own mental health, how to improve it, how to look out for problems in others, and how to help them as well. So today we're going to be talking about communication and conversations and how that can benefit us. This is a graphic that I pulled up here. Some of you will recognize that just because it may have been your own experience at some point. The way that our brains work is that the more that we do of something, the more our brain adjusts to it and the more easier it becomes for us. Our brains are amazing that way. Our brains are basically neutral. They'll adjust to anything that you feed it over and over and over again, and even if it's negative. And so in this case, you've got people who maybe start out as lonely. They're not very connected. They're not having a lot of communication. They become depressed. They isolate because of that, and then that cycle just keeps going. One of the things that is true about that is as depression and loneliness increase, interpersonal engagement and communication skills often decrease. So it just creates that negative spiral to oftentimes where we get to the point where we can't really do it on our own and we need help from there. But the opposite works as well. That's the great thing about your brain. As interpersonal engagement and communication skills increase, then depression and loneliness can decrease. You can reverse that spiral at any time. It's difficult to reverse it, and what often happens is people will you'll have a habit that you've been doing for 20 years straight, and then you'll decide that you want to change that habit tomorrow. You'll leave here inspired, and you'll say, I'm going to change this, and you start tomorrow, and it doesn't work. You try it, and you fall flat on your face, and your brain goes right back to what it's been doing for the past 20 years. Don't worry about that. Keep doing it over and over and over again. Don't lose hope, because eventually you get into this type of spiral here, where you start to communicate more, you're engaging more, that increases connection, and then it just goes from there. I often talk about, you ever meet those people that are just insufferably happy, that just all the time, they're just always positive, and sometimes it drives you crazy? That's because they've practiced happiness so much that that's just what their brain does. It's on this crazy happy loop, and when you try to make them depressed, it's hard, because their brain resists it. Their brain says, no, this isn't what we do. We're on the happy loop. We can all get there. And so we're grateful to our speakers today that Brandy will introduce here in just a minute. At Silicon Slopes, we're here to provide you with mental health resources. We have these monthly town halls. We just started recording our Mental Health Momentum podcast that I'll be hosting. We had our first 2 guests on Monday, and we're super excited about that. It's just a podcast where we're going to talk about mental health issues in the workplace, what's happening, what's not happening, what needs to happen. If you know someone you think would be a great guest for that, or if you have any questions about mental health related for Silicon Slopes, that's a great way to get in touch with me at mentalhealth@siliconslopes.com. So without further ado, I will turn the time over to Brandy Vega of Promise2Live.
Well, thank you. How are you guys today? So good. I don't know if any of you need to wear sunglasses. I apologize for the outfit, but I don't. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Before we get started, I want to thank Lauren. Is she over here? There you are. Lauren, come on up. They provided lunch for us today. How many enjoyed your lunch? I'm going to let her tell you just a little bit about the company.
Hi guys, I'm Lauren. I'm with Melty. We actually just opened on the 14th of March. We're just over on Timpanogos Highway, just off the freeway, right by the 7-Eleven across the street from Maverick. We have a ton of grilled cheese. We have salads, soups, kids meals that also include mac and cheese bites. That's a big hit with them. So we were just really excited to be able to do this for you guys. When Julie came and approached me about 10 days ago, I was just in awe of what this company was doing. So she actually gave me a pocket hug just to kind of show what this was about. And I actually had a friend who's a veteran who's going through a lot, and I gave it to him, and he keeps it in his wallet and has it every time. So he actually really loves that. So thank you.
Thank you. Give her a round. Thank you so much. Well, we want to thank Melty and Lauren, and we want to thank Silicon Slopes and Clint Betts for hosting this and facilitating it. And thank you guys for showing up. I'm excited. Today we're going to hear from Becky Kemp here in just a little bit, and then we're going to hear from Cameron McBride. But first, I'm going to share some exciting news with you guys. A lot has been happening with Promise to Live. How many of you know about Promise to Live, or is this your first time? If it's your first time, raise your hand. Okay, great. We got a lot of new people here. Let me just tell you a little bit about it. Brandy, Vega, I'm the founder of this. I almost lost my daughter to suicide, not once, but twice. The first time we didn't talk about it because of the stigma and the shame. The second time, I was just begging God to save her life, and I knew I couldn't do the same thing and expect a different result. And because I had volunteered at the hospital for 7 years doing spiritual care, which in fact today on Facebook, a memory popped up from 9 years ago. I was volunteering at the hospital holding the hand of a patient who had attempted to end his life. I sat with 2 patients that day who I don't know if they made it or if they didn't make it, and I sat with their families. And 14 years ago, another memory popped up yesterday. I sat with a girl named Tuya. She was 16 years old, and she struggled with mental health and suicide ideation. And I interviewed her and her mom and her dad 14 years ago, and we talked about all of her struggles and how she didn't want to be here and how she was, harming herself. And I watched that video, and she's crying in pain. And her mom's saying, I make her promise, and we stick around, and we just try to get through it. I have watched this girl grow for the last 14 years. She's 30 years old. She's an amazing dancer. She did a video with Jennifer Lopez. She's dancing, she's thriving, she's living, and it just makes me so happy because there's hope. So when I sat there and I did this video in my car having a breakdown, asking for help, not knowing where to go, the video went viral. Long story short, I've ended up sharing my story for the last 3 years, and I discovered that there's a huge need, and that's what Promise to Live is. And it's the biggest issue plaguing the planet right now. It's mental health, suicide, addiction, and trauma. I mean, I'm on a global initiative called the Grand Challenge. You guys remember when they were fighting your brain on drugs and tobacco and all of these? These are global initiatives called the Grand Challenge. I'm on a team, and this is what we look at. And this is what we're fighting. And they think the number one way that we can combat this is to stop the stigma. How do we stop the stigma? We start talking. We start having conversations. We start sharing. We start making commitments. So we created Promise to Live, and every 40 seconds, we lose someone we love to suicide. Those numbers are just they're not going down. And that's heartbreaking. I don't know if, a lot of us in here have been touched by that. So what we've created is we're asking everybody everywhere. I'm going to ask all of you in here right now and watching to make the promise to live. And the promise is this: if I ever find myself in a dark situation, in a bad place, you promise that you'll reach out to someone, to anyone, a friend, a family member, a trusted resource, or call or text 988. This is what we're trying to get out. We're gathering all the trusted resources, and I know there's some in this room. This is my mission. I want to make service available to you at your fingertips. We deliver hope, help, and healing through media. We deliver it to your phones. We collaborate. Our goal is to create a community of collaboration. And we have had some very fun things, so thank you for being here. I would like anybody who's on the Promise to Live team just to stand up, please. I want to acknowledge my team and give everybody, thank you. And I would like to invite those who participated in the Kevin Bacon event to come on up, and then Adam to please come on up. So we had the Kevin Bacon team with 6 Degrees. Sean here had reached out to them, and they wanted 5,000 of our pocket hugs. So if you didn't get a pocket hug at the door, please make sure you get one. Here's what the pocket hug is. Come up on stage. It's a coin that says, when times are tough and you don't know what to do, here's a hug from me to you. And this is something that we all need. So Kevin Bacon and his group, we gave them 5,000 of the pocket hugs to give to people who are struggling. Outside of that, these guys handed out more of them. And then we were also in Mesa for the Mesa Music Festival, and we did some stuff with Red Barn. But I wanted to ask these guys, just share for a minute what it was like. Like, what we did is we went out there and we wore our shirts, these Promise2Live shirts that say need a hug. And this team here, they were interacting with the community. And I just want to share a little bit of this experience. Just give us 30 seconds or a minute of what came of that. Introduce
Sure.
yourself.
Thanks, Brandy. Hi, I'm Randy Cameron. And I've been working with Brandy now a couple of years, 3 years, however long. I can tell you that my shirt does not fit like Adam's. I don't know why. I don't know why. A great experience this weekend. Kind of got a renewed sense of trust in kids, especially these youth. We met a lot, and they asked fantastic questions, and they kept coming back, and they would bring somebody back, and they would want to get more hugs, and they were passing them out. But at the end of the day, I just said, these kids get it. And I think more than just getting it, they're feeling it, and they see this as an opportunity.
Hi, I'm Brenda Betteridge, and I was able to go to the Kevin Bacon event as well. I don't know why. It was the Bacon to Payson event, and it was awesome because we got to meet some really, really cool people. Not only the students who were amazing, but some of the adults came back. I had one lady that came to me and she showed me her arm, and on her arm was a tattoo that said "continue." And she had attempted to take her life several years ago, and then realized that was not what she wanted to do, but she wanted to remind people that she needs to continue and they need to continue. And so there were some really inspiring stories that we got to share with people there. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Kazarian, and I attended the Bacon event as well. You know, it was so much fun because this event was so charged, and the youth are just phenomenal. You know, I picked up a little thing from Crawford, so I go up to these teenagers and I said, "Have you made the promise?" And they go, "No. What promise?" And they would just we'd just bring them in, and then we'd talk about the promise, making the promise to live. And then we had a group of young men that were so involved, it resonated with them. So they took a bunch of pocket hugs and they were handing them out. And they came back for more. They handed out wristbands. And it was just such a positive event, and I was just grateful to be a part of it. It kind of charged me up, too. So.
I love it. And you were there. I'm going to have you read a letter here in a minute, but just briefly tell us about your experience.
There's no briefly in me. So my experience was modestly different. So my daughter and my wife came with me. And 14 and a half years ago, my daughter attempted suicide. And this is how our nights went after that. I would sit by her door of her bedroom, and she would sit inside with her door shut, and she would say, "Dad, I promise 24 hours. And that's what she would say. And she was on suicide watch in our home for 6 months, and we sent her to a care facility to get steady. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so anyway, she was sharing her story with other people, and so it meant something to me because this year she got engaged and then married, and she went back to school, and on Friday they'll close on a home. And here's what she said more than anything else to people. She would hand them a pocket nut hug. And she would say two things. First, she would say, I remember when my dad gave me a hug just like this a few months ago. And I carry it with me everywhere. And then she'd just look at me for a second. And then she'd smile. There was a long time she didn't smile. She was on suicide watch in our home, in a facility, or under special care for 10 years, making a promise. And this morning, I talked to her on the phone, and she said, Dad, you need to know that if you're not careful, you'll say that you're making the promise for the other person. She said, you know, I didn't make that promise for you. I made that promise for me. Because I was learning how to keep my promise to live, not to keep a promise to you that I would live for some benefit for you. And I don't know about you, but that's kind of like a wow. So anyway, I'm going to read this letter. Is that okay? You want to?
Yeah, I kind of want to set that up. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think there's a lot of parents in here who've gone through hard things with our kids. I mean, for me, for 5 years, I just tried to keep her alive. For 5 years. And last week, we were sitting in the kitchen, and she said, I can't wait to get older. I wonder what I'm going to be like at 40. I can't wait to be 60. That moment for me was everything. That's why I'm here today. That's why I fight every day. For the first time in 5 years, she wanted to live. She's excited to live. And that's what Promise to Live is. We want people to know it's okay to not be okay. But there is hope, and there is help, and there are resources, and we can talk about it. And I think that we all saw that. So we had this group at the Kevin Bacon event. Like, we're getting out in the community hosting connections, because we know through connections that heals a lot of hearts. Sean and Adam and I went to the Mesa Music Festival, and I just want him to share his experience, and then I'll share about the Red Barn, and then we'll kind of get going. So what was your experience like?
Well, Phoenix this time of year is about 100 degrees, so it was a little warmer, but it was really fun and really interactive. I got to give out a few hundred pocket hugs, and it was incredible. But what I would ask people, we'd give them a little bit of, hey, this is what we're about. And then I'd ask, do you need a hug? And I only had 2 people tell me no the whole day. And it was a warm day. And so the first person I hugged, just to, I come from a hugging family. I'm a hugger. I like to hug. They're good hugs.
Good hugs.
Good hugs. If anybody wants a hug afterwards, I'll give you a hug. This is a halfway hug. This doesn't count. Two halves make a whole. Nice try.
There you go.
And the first person I hugged, I went to let go, and they didn't let go. And so I decided that I was going to let them let go first. And I found that each and every hug was over 30 seconds long. And of the people that got hugs, half of them at least said they couldn't remember the last time that they'd been hugged.
And I want to pipe in and just say that the people that wanted these hugs, the people that were getting them, were not the people you would think, right? We had some 15, 16-year-old kids who looked like they might have weapons on them. And we had some elderly, you know what I mean? Like, it was just this broad spectrum. We had one lady who came by 3 times. I had to remind her we're married, but she enjoyed the hug. And what did it mean to you?
It was incredible. So I realized how much connection we need, that you can't judge a book by its cover. You don't know what people need. And so if you offer love and your heart and just a genuine hug, it goes miles. And it absolutely saves lives, because they know that they care. And as soon as you hug them, you hand them a hug and say, every time you touch this, remember that anytime you want a hug, I'll give you one. And it means so much to me, knowing that it made a difference in their life. So often we think, I can't make any difference. It doesn't matter what I do. That made a difference. And it's just a hug to people that needed a hug?
I loved watching that and witnessing it. And one of the things we talked about last time was connection. How do we connect with people? And if any of you guys know Kevin Hines' story, he's the guy that jumped off of the, which bridge was it in California? The San Francisco, Golden Gate, and survived. And he jumped off, he survived. He said he walked 2 miles sobbing. He was like 18, 19 years old. And he thought, if one person stops me, if one person asks if I'm okay, if one person acknowledges me, I'm going to know that I matter, that somebody cares, that I'm seen. 2 miles he walked from the bus to the bridge, and as he got closer, somebody stopped him. And they said, will you take our photo? And he took their photo, and then he walked and he jumped. He's one of the only survivors of that. He said just one person. We have another friend, and I won't mention any names, but there's somebody whose child was ready to step into traffic and said, if same thing, if anybody acknowledges me, God, send me a sign. If anybody acknowledges me, I'll live. And just as she got ready to step down, somebody yelled across the way, you're beautiful. And she stopped. What does it take? I would invite you to reach out to whoever's on your mind right now. Just take 10 seconds and think about who's somebody today that I should check on. And just send them a quick text or a call and say, I'm just thinking about you. Take a pocket hug. If you didn't get one, get one. If you already have one, give one. We're going to be doing these only in groups of 2. It's make the promise to live, a pocket hug to keep, a pocket hug to give. We don't come into this world alone. We don't go out alone. We shouldn't feel alone. And none of you are alone. We are here for you. We love you. Somebody loves you. The world is better because you're in it. We went to Red Barn. How many of you know what Red Barn is? So I was invited to go speak at Red Barn. This is a group of people who struggled, mostly with addiction. And a lot of them, this is their last chance at getting their life together and creating this, like getting out of trouble. And so I went to speak to them about Promise to Live and what we're doing in the pocket hug. But we have this letter writing campaign. And we're asking people to write these heartfelt, handwritten letters of love with encouragement, with hope. And so we've done these, and we've seen them. And last time we held this event, we gave them out, and I saw a bunch of people out in our audience crying because we're not immune, feeling touched, saying, nobody's told me that I matter or that I'm worthy. So we go to this event, Adam and I do, and the mission was we tell them about it, and then everybody had to sit there and write a letter. And they wrote these letters. And then at the end, I said, I didn't think they'd want to share. I said, would any of you like to share your letter? And I was amazed at how many people got up to share. And the first one got up to share, and the walls came down, and the vulnerability came out, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next thing you know, there's really not a dry eye in the room, and they're sharing these. And afterward, the guy came up to me and he said, I've been in this group for 2 years. I've never seen anything like this. The ability to stop stigma, start conversations, saves lives when we do it, when we're vulnerable. I have 70 letters in this bag. If you want to read one, you're welcome to read one, but I've asked our dear friend Crawford to read just one of the letters of the about 100 that we got that night.
Okay, so I'm going to read this. This was written by Robert, not by Crawford.
Right.
So, to you, I want you to know how important you are. I know you may not feel that way at times, but maybe that's just because you haven't been told enough. That isn't your fault. We are failed by society and those that are supposed to love us most. That isn't your fault either. You have no control over the negative behaviors of others, but you do have control over how you react to it. Over your attitude and mindset, and ultimately over your decisions. Decide to be happy. Know that you are loved. Know that this too shall pass. Know that you can have an impact in this world, and most likely already have had in somebody's life. We need you. There are people who haven't even been thought of or born yet who are going to want to meet and know you and love you. Trust me when I tell you that you will never regret making the decision to live life to the fullest every single day. You are worth more than all the money and jewels on this green earth. Always remember that. Make the promise to live. Love, Robert.
Isn't that beautiful? Thank you guys for sharing that. We're on a mission to give out 100,000 pocket hugs this year and 100,000 letters. If you guys want to join us in that campaign, please let us know. We'd love to have you participate in your neighborhood, your church group, your business. Thank you to the Promise to Live volunteer or board, our advisory team, and everyone out there, Julie for setting this up, Sean for doing all the great work. Please have a seat. All right, I just wanted to quickly share a couple of amazing things that have happened. So Promise to Live, we're in our 3rd year. We're doing this campaign. We're doing our annual show, which is September 10th. It's World Suicide Prevention Day. And last year we reached 400,000 people. The first year we reached 160,000. Let me tell you why this is important. When I shared my story on the news, I said, stop what you're doing. I did it reluctantly on NBC after almost losing my child. I said, stop what you're doing and go check on those you love and ask them point blank if they're suicidal. Honest questions get honest answers. After it aired, a father reached out to me and he said, you just saved my daughter's life. I said, what do you mean? He said, I saw your story on the news. I went to talk to my daughter. I went in her room. She had already written a letter. She was in the process of trying to end her life. We're getting help at the hospital right now. And then another family said, I saw your story. We talked to our 15-year-old. He confessed he had a plan to end his life this weekend. We're getting help. I know the power of media. I've been doing it for 30 years professionally. I own a production company. This is my passion. So we did our first show. I thought if we can just reach, I don't know, however many, the more people we can reach with this message, the more people who know about resources, the more all of this, then we can save lives. So first year we reached 160,000. Last year we reached 400,000. This year we just booked the iconic Avalon Theater in Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard to do our big show September 10th, and we hope you'll join us. So this is kind of a big deal. We've got actor John Boyd committed. I'm going to Hollywood next week. We're working on talent, if you guys know any great talent. And what we do with these shows is we have singers, celebrities, CEOs, doctors, survivors, and we're putting out messages of hope and encouragement, but it's really fun. It's like a musician show and talent. And now I've been asked to do a national TV show. So we're starting 3rd quarter in July. We're going to be doing a national TV show every single week on Promise to Live. It will go out to 200 plus stations, reaching 30 to 40 million households a week. What is the power of that? I'm really, really excited about that. Not because, I mean, I do love production, but what I'm excited about is to get those letters from Red Barn out. I'm excited to share your story. I'm excited to share the hope and the encouragement and that this is preventable and we're not alone. So having said that, thank you guys for being here. I'm gonna turn the time over to Becky, who's going to be our first speaker. She'll be followed by Cameron. If we have a little bit of time after, we'd love to take a few questions. But before you guys leave, I would love for you to talk to me or somebody on our advisory team or board and share your information. Please get involved. We need advocates, ambassadors. We need sponsors. We need guests for our show, and a lot of you are doing amazing things. And here's the truth. All of us can do something. All we have to want to do is do it. And the fact that you're here shows me you're the doers. So thank you.
Okay, you guys familiar with the saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but what?
Words will never hurt me.
Words will never hurt me. Is that true?
No.
Then why did we all know that? When did we learn that? Right? It's something that every single one of us probably learned when we were young. The truth is our words matter, and they matter even more than those sticks and stones. When I was in 7th grade, I was getting into a bottom locker. I shared with my friend. I was kneeling down. The crowded halls got the better of me. Someone fell on me, and I got my arm broken. That healed. But some of the things I heard when I was young, they've stayed with me, some of those words. And you know what else has had even a bigger impact on my life is the way I've talked to myself. The words we put in our life have power. I go into schools and I talk about intentional behaviors. And what I find so fascinating, especially the younger grades, when you go into the elementary schools, most teachers decorate their walls with positive messaging and good slogans and good sayings. Yet I think as we get older, we stop noticing the words. We stop putting those words on in our lives each and every day. And the words we put in our life have an effect. It's called the word effect. There is an effect with everything we think about. And we have the power to choose. And we have to look at that intentionally first within, and then as we become intentional to our words, we have the power to help others. But it starts within. So I want you to think about your intentions with words. And ask yourself, what words did you put on today? What are you thinking about? Because what you think about, you bring about. That's how powerful our thoughts are. It's springtime here in Utah. How many of you guys plant gardens? Some of us do, or maybe go out and want to have a pretty flower bed. What do we have to do when springtime comes? We have to clean things up, right? And what grows faster, the plants or the weeds? Those darn weeds, right? They do. And we have to cultivate our ground. We have to take care of it. We have to nurture it. We have to do that with our thoughts as well. Each and every day, we have to think about it. So I want to help you understand how powerful words are, get you thinking about what words you put in your life, get you aware to them. Because like what I heard earlier, we know this and we'll get excited about it for a few days and then we forget. We have to become intentional with the words we put on and cultivate intentional language, because that's going to help us step forward when things don't go as planned. How many of you guys so far in your life have had it go as planned? Anyone? No, me either. 10 years ago, I found myself stuck. I was full of depression, anxiety. I was suffering with addiction problems. I was suffering with raising children that didn't want to behave and do what I needed them to do or what I thought they needed to do. Anybody relate to that, right? There was a lot of financial struggles. There was a lot of things going wrong in my life, or so I thought. And I was waiting for outside circumstances to change. If somebody else could change, then I could find joy. If this person would do this differently, then my life would be better. And then I had this simple realization. I learned that the power to change our lives is actually within. And as we begin to change our words, we actually can change our story. We can cultivate and create a new path to go down. And that's why this is a critical conversation, because so often we're like, what can I do to change? And we think it has to be really big. But what if it's simple? What if it just has to do with the words we start to focus on and the words we share to others and the way we talk to ourselves and the way we talk to others makes such a difference. Most of us would talk very nice to others, but we might not talk nice to ourselves. And that's where a lot of us can find ourselves stuck. But we're talking negative to ourselves over and over again. So just because life doesn't go as planned doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different. And I like to say different doesn't mean wrong. It just means different. Because none of us have control of our plan, because it always has detours. There's always obstacles. There's a thing called negative bias, and all of us have it. Our brains are wired to protect us. They're wired to keep us safe. So if we went on a hike up in the Wasatch Mountains and we saw a big rattlesnake, it would startle us, but we were never in real danger. But each one of us comes down from that hike, we get in our cars, we get on our cell phone, we talk to that one person. Think of that person you're going to call. What do you think that you would say first thing to them? I almost died. I almost died. I saw a snake. Research by psychologists is this, that 99% of us in this room would say, first thing, I saw the snake. We would focus on the negative thing first before we focused on, but the hike was beautiful and I was with great company and it was so nice out. our focus would be on the negative. We all have this, and we probably all will. But what we get to do is choose our second thought of how long we focus on the negative before we redirect towards the positive. Because if we focus on the negative, guess what? Our brains will go, let me show you more negative. And it grows, and it grows. But the cool thing is if we focus on the good, that grows too. And that's where the power lies within us. So I want to invite you to think about the words you put on each and every day and start to cultivate your mind. Oftentimes we think of going to the gym to lift a weight for our biceps. And we know that we can't just lift weights once and then we're done, right? We know we have to be consistent. But do we lift the weights that we need to with our minds? Do we cultivate our mind? Because if we do, our brain, like you mentioned back here, our brain is a powerful tool. We just have to use a better way of using it is we become intentional with where we focus it. Because if we don't, it will point us in the negative all the time. So that's how I came up with my book. 10 years ago, I started to see how powerful words were. I began to change my words. I started a positive t-shirt and apparel business. And then in 2019, 2020, I decided I wanted to become a speaker and a coach. And I started to write my book. I didn't know what I was doing, and I won't tell much of that story here. But I came up with these 7 words, 7 simple words that we should all practice putting on. The first word is acknowledge. The second word is ask. The third word is accept. The fourth word is abundance. The fifth word is action. Sixth word is appreciate. And seventh word is aspire. And they're all words that we can put intentionally in our lives. Now, I don't have time to talk about all of them, but I want to teach you one of those words today because words are a compass in our lives. They make all the difference, but we choose them. So the word I want to just briefly tell you about is the power of ask. It's the second power word that I offer. Why do most of us not ask questions? Anybody want to tell us? You that smiled. What? You don't want to know the answer. Okay, very true.
You don't want to be perceived as dumb or not knowing something.
Don't want to be perceived as dumb or not knowing. You raise your hand. Fear. Okay?
You might think you already know the answer.
Okay, there can be some ego in the way, right? Like, my way's the right way. I don't want anyone else's opinion. There's a lot of reasons why we maybe don't ask questions, but the power of asking is so important. So consider, what words did you put in your life today? What are you thinking about? Because what you think about, you bring about. Now, a simple way to change this is this. Start focusing on how instead of why. When we focus on why, you know what it tells our brain? There's obstacles. There's problems. I have to tell you, I'm a mom of 5 boys. Now, I get asked all the time, I saw your reaction. Didn't you want a girl? Well, of course I did. I wanted 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. That's what I wanted. But it didn't go as planned. And you know, if I was still focused on why is this happening, why didn't I get a girl, I would have missed out on the joy of the 5 boys that I have. So instead of focusing on the whys, because that tells our brain to look for the obstacles, we focus on solutions. How do I be the best boy mom? How do I make the best of this situation? This is how our words matter. We can't always control what happens in our life, but we have the ability to redirect. So begin to do that in your own life. Start just asking how questions and see how your brain will go to work for you. It's an awesome way to show up. It's okay not to know all the answers. So, cultivate your own words. Start by becoming intentional. Start by figuring out some small phrases that matter to you. Find those phrases. I love your pocket hugs, how they are small and simple, but they remind us of what we're doing. Find your own phrases, become intentional with them, and then begin to ask powerful questions by asking how. This is how you can speak your own success to create your most beautiful life, one step at a time. When I finish up right now, I'd love to meet you after, but I just have this quick sheet. You're welcome to get one of these. It's 3 words that I love to offer. I only shared one of them with you, but it's simple reminders, because we can come away from these things and we're motivated and we're ready to change, and 15 minutes later we can't remember what we were going to do. At least that's been my story. So I hope that you can practice putting on the power of how. The other words that I offer on my worksheet are the power of acknowledge and the power of abundance. It was a pleasure being here. Just remember, your words matter. And as you cultivate your words, then you'll be ready to help someone else, to help them. Because together, we can make a difference with our conversations. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. That was great. It's great to be here and spend a few minutes with you today. So a few months ago, I was in Cache Valley. I was visiting some of the organizations we work with there. And as most of you know, they've been in Cache Valley. There's a main road that runs all the way through Cache Valley. It goes from Hiram all the way up into Idaho. And this one particular afternoon, it was right around lunchtime. I am in between Hiram and Logan, and I'm just about getting into Logan, coming down this road, and there's 2 lanes of traffic going each way, plus a left turning lane. And I pull up to the stoplight to turn left, and there's a guy in front of me in a Ford Ranger, and there's the traffic that's still coming this way, and he pulls out into the intersection, and I'm right behind him, and we're just waiting for traffic, waiting for the light to turn. We sit there for a while, and the light turns yellow. And the first lane of traffic stopped, and the gentleman in front of me in the Ford Ranger goes ahead to turn left. What he didn't see was that the outside lane of traffic had a car in it that was not intending to stop. In the Ford Ranger in front of me was a kid. He was probably 18 years old or so. The car that was coming that he did not see was a smaller SUV with an older couple in it. He began to turn left. That older couple at 45 miles an hour slams into him. Both of their cars go veering off and then proceeded to hit other cars that were in the intersection planning to go across. Now, I'm right behind the guy in the Ranger, and you know, a million thoughts go through your mind, right? Your anxiety instantly increases, and I realize that I need to help, right? But there's a split second in my mind where I'm trying to kind of brace myself for this, because you don't know what you're going to find sometimes in an accident. And I'm not a medical person, but I knew I needed to help. So I leave my truck in the intersection, I throw it into a park, I jump out, and I start walking to the guy in the Ranger. He's the one that's closest to me. The SUV had kind of veered off and was headed down the road as it hit a couple of cars. So I walk over to the guy in the Ranger, and I try to open his driver's door, and the driver's door is jammed. It won't open. And I can see him trying to move around inside of the truck. So I walk around the back side of this truck, and I go to the passenger side door, and I open the door as I can see him struggling to get to the passenger side door. As I open the door, he falls out of the truck and lands literally on my feet. And I'm talking to him like, hey, buddy, don't move. Everything's going to be okay. Just hold still. Just don't move. Because I don't know how bad he's hurt. Not sure what's going on exactly. And he's on my feet. And so I don't move. And so I kneel down with him, and I put my hand on his shoulder. Now, I don't know this guy. Never seen him before. He doesn't know me. And all I did until medical authorities arrived was just talk to him with my hand on his shoulder, hoping that he would feel a little bit of comfort just because someone was there, someone that was hopefully showing some concern. So I stood with him for a while. And I was telling him reassuring things. Hey, don't worry. It's going to be okay. We got people coming. And as you can imagine, there's chaos going on all around us, right? You've got multiple cars involved in the accident. There's people that are coming up to me, and they're like, okay, what do we do? And I'm like, and I'm trying to talk. I'm consoling this guy. I'm talking, tell him to call 911. And I'm like, is someone with the other couple in the other car? Anyway, It was a chaotic scene. And there was a time there, though, when everybody was kind of getting some assistance, and I was able just to sit with this guy for a little bit. And I could tell not only was he in pain, but he's emotionally struggling too. It would be hard. And he's young. And so I stayed with him until medical personnel arrived. Fortunately, it wasn't that long of a wait. There happened to be an EMT that was driving by that saw the accident and got out to provide assistance. And of course, began to ask him, who do we call? And he said, can you call my mom? So we called the mom. His mom came. Ambulances came. They ended up taking some people to the hospital. After all the chaos was kind of done, I spent some time with the police, and they were asking me questions, as you normally would do. And I got in my car, and as I was leaving the scene, I was just kind of reflecting, right? Because when you have something like that happen, you think about it for a long time, because it kind of gets your emotions going, your anxiety, and you're kind of replaying in your mind what happened. Now, I want you to think in your own mind, what if it was you that was in that situation? Hopefully, all of us would jump out of our car and help. But what about the alternative? What if I would have stayed in my car and sent him a text message? Hey, man, hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you need any help. Or just did nothing. Now, I recognize that might be a little bit extreme in regards to what we're talking about today. But we spend quite a bit of time talking about what do we do when we're struggling with mental health. But what I want to talk a little bit today about is what do we do if it's our friends or family or loved ones that are struggling with mental health? What do we do? And really talk about what are the practical things we do. Because sometimes I think, talk in what we think the ideal situation is, and here's how you're going to handle it. Things don't always work that way. It just doesn't always pan out that way. But there are going to be those circumstances where we might be the ones that show up to an accident, and we need to be the ones to respond. And how do we do that? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So this here is an acronym. It's BELIEVE. This was created by a guy named Chad Buck. He's a psychologist. And he talks about when you've got someone that you know or care about that is struggling with suicide, what are some things that you should have going through your mind? And so you can read through these, and we're going to talk a little bit more about these. But he talks, first of all, we need to believe that what they're saying or the things that they may be indicating are real, and that we need to take them seriously. One of our roles when that's the case is then to begin in those conversations, to really engage with them and help them. And we're going to talk about how to do that. And then to listen without judgment or arguing. And then investigate what their intent is. And then express empathy for that individual. Validate how they're feeling. And then encourage them. Okay? And I'll talk a little bit more about most of this. Some of you have already been in these situations where you've had an individual who was struggling and you were the one that was tasked with going through this. Sometimes we are afraid to have the conversation because it's scary or it's something we're uncomfortable with. And I believe that there's multiple reasons for that, but sometimes I believe it's because people think if I engage in that conversation, I'm expected to solve the problem. I will tell you right now, that is not the case. No one expects you to solve the problem. Your role is to be a support. That's what it is. So don't ever be afraid to talk to someone because you're worried that now I've got to figure out how to fix it. Now, for many of us, that looks different depending on the situation. So let's say that we've identified someone, we've got a friend, they've made some comments, they're making us nervous, there's some things going on in their life, or maybe like the example Brandy gave earlier, we had no reason to believe there was something going on, they just happened to ask, like the father. We need to be thoughtful about that conversation. And when we can, have that conversation in a place where you can be uninterrupted and you can have a thoughtful conversation with them. Now, a part of that conversation is going to be asking direct questions, and Brandy touched on this as well a minute ago. Sometimes we think, if I ask someone if they're considering suicide, I might be putting thoughts in their minds they would not otherwise have. I will tell you right now, that is wrong. It's just not true. It is not true. It is much better to ask the direct questions than to think that you may be causing a bigger problem by asking the questions, because it's not true. So please, even though it's scary, ask the hard questions. Ask the hard questions. Chances are they are only going to help, and they will not be offended by your taking that opportunity to ask those questions. Now, the last thing it talks on here is about being non-judgmental. I can tell you, if you're in that circumstance, you're less likely to help someone if they feel like you're just there to tell them that they're crazy about the way they're thinking. I'll give you an example. Just on Sunday, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. He's a neighbor. He's having some struggles. He's having a hard time, and it has been for a while. He's got some what we call thinking errors going on. And the hard thing for him is he knows very well he's got thinking errors. He knows it, but he doesn't know how to fix it. That's the hard part. The hard part's fixing it. And so he doesn't need me or anybody else to tell him, hey, you're kind of messed up in the way you're thinking. That's just not right. He already knows it. Rather, we need to say, hey, let's talk about it, and let's see if we can get some support and do some things to help you. You know, and for me as a neighbor and a friend, that might simply be taking him to lunch once in a while and sitting down and just talking about it. The cool thing is, when you've had that conversation with someone initially, they're more willing to talk to you after the fact. Whereas otherwise, they're probably afraid to talk. The other day, I was doing a presentation similar to this, and I was talking to an executive there who has responsibility over, it's kind of like a collaborative of large companies. And she has had her own mental health struggles. And she was telling me that she was surprised at how often when she would mention to someone that she considered a friend or a family member that she was having mental health struggles, that the conversation would kind of abruptly come to an end. Or they would kind of look the other way or try and change the subject. And once again, she was not expecting them to solve her problems. She just wanted to have a conversation with them and tell them, hey, I'm having a little bit of a struggle here. I hope that as we reflect inside, that we're not the ones that turn away or try and change the subject. Rather, ask questions. Find out what it is they're struggling with. Once you find that out, and we'll talk in a second about what do you do about it, right? Because like I said, you're not supposed to solve everybody's problems, but you can still be a good listener, which is what we're going to talk about next. What does it mean to be an active listener? You've heard this before. I have a good friend of mine who is one of the best listeners ever. And because of that, I love interacting with her. Like, she looks me straight in the eyes. It's very clear that she's interested in what I have to say. She's asking questions about what I'm saying, and she's engaged in the conversation. And she's just also one of those people that's just generally happy all the time. You were talking about. She's one of those. She's awesome. Everybody loves her. But she cares about people. And I think it's because she's so good at being an active listener. And we can practice that as well. We have opportunities to practice active listening all the time. Just last night, I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm doing something on my phone. It's like 9:30 at night, and my 15-year-old son comes up to me, and he's telling me something about a new video game that's being released. Okay, I'm not a gamer, and I don't care about video games, but I care about my son, right? And so for me, I needed to take whatever I was doing with my phone, I don't remember what it was, put it down, and actually listen to my son. And that kind of thing helps me build a relationship with him, so that if he's got a conversation he wants to have with me and it has nothing to do with video games, he's more likely to engage in that conversation because he knows that I'm going to put down whatever I'm doing to listen. Now, I'm not always great at that. I'm trying to act like I'm Father of the Year. I'm not. But sometimes as parents or friends, we need to make sure that we're putting aside whatever we've got going on so we can listen to somebody. And the sad part is you never know who it is that might be struggling. It can be anybody. If you look at the statistics, the last numbers that were published in regards to suicides that happened, I think it was 2021 data or 2022. Men are 4 times more likely than women to take their life by suicide. Now, that doesn't mean we forget about the women and they've got it all together. They've got their struggles too. But sometimes the men do a really great job of hiding it. One of my best friends, I talked with him a couple weeks ago because I heard something crazy was going on in his life, and it was. He has a brother-in-law who, by all standards, as most people would consider, had a very successful life. He's in his early 50s. He's an orthodontist. He'd built a very successful practice. He was very financially stable. He had a loving wife and a great relationship with her, and loving kids and great relationship with them. And his plan was to retire this summer at an early age. And he took his own life 3 weeks ago. You can imagine the devastation to that family. And as I was talking to my friend about the circumstances, you could feel the burden that that family was carrying. And there were probably a lot of them saying, if only I would have done this. You know, we all say that, right, when something happens like that. And they knew he was struggling because he'd been struggling for a few months. And you always are going to be wondering if you ask the direct questions. Or were you a good listener? And I'm helping him to understand you can't blame yourself. But the scary part about this was, so there's another one of our best friends. The 3 of us spend a lot of time together. We do a lot of hobbies together. I was talking to the other friend on my drive home. It was 9 o'clock at night or so. And he's like, hey, I just got off the phone. I was just talking to so-and-so this afternoon. And he was saying some things that got me worried. Kind of like, now that my brother-in-law has died, I'm not sure if I want to do this. And this friend of mine, I'm like, whoa, what did you say? He's like, well, I didn't really know what to say. I'm like, I need you to call him back right now. I need you to ask him some questions. I said, you got to ask him, are you considering hurting yourself? And I said, I need you to call him right now. I need you to call me back. And so he did. He called him, he talked to him, and he called me back. And he's okay. But I don't know if he would have happened had he not asked that question. We'll never know. And that's okay. Hopefully he's okay. But I'll tell you what, though, I'm going to be checking in with that friend more than in regards to his own individual mental health than I would have in the past. And it's simply because you're asking some questions, you're showing some sympathy. You never know who it might be that's struggling. So please don't miss an opportunity to be the one that supports somebody. Okay? So we talked about asking direct questions. This is super important. Take the time, make it a priority. So here's what we do about it, okay? So we've identified, we've talked with someone, they're struggling. What do we do? As I said earlier, it's not your responsibility to fix them. But what is your responsibility is to help connect them to someone that can help them. If they are answering questions in a way that makes you feel that they are having some struggles, that they may be considering hurting themselves. The great thing is there are a ton of resources available. The hard thing is sometimes it's hard to know where they are and how to access them. Brandy's got her own stories about that. And that's one of the reasons Promise2Live is in existence. There are resources available. If you go to Promise2Live website, it talks about some of those, and we're working actually on adding even more, making that bigger and better. There's always 988. That's an option as well. Your responsibility, especially if it looks like there's an urgent concern, is to stay with that person until you get them connected to someone that can help. You don't want to leave them alone. Now, I recognize this is a hard conversation. These are not necessarily fun things to talk about, but I think they're important. And as we see it becoming more and more prevalent, it's more and more important that we're talking about it. The good thing is more and more people are willing to talk, which is great. And that's why you're here, right? So thank you for your willingness to be here. Now I want to talk for a minute about what Promise2Live can do for you. We've talked a little bit about that already, but I want to add my experience. My first exposure to Promise2Live happened in January of this year, so it was just a couple months ago. Actually in a town hall just like this. I was here, I got an invitation, and I thought, well, I'll go check it out. So I came, and I got pocket hug too, right here. So I went home. I learned from Brandy. She shared her experience during that meeting. I went home, and I still had my pocket hug with me. And I'm one of those that kind of likes to fidget with things anyway. And so I'm fidgeting with my pocket hug as I'm sitting at the counter. We have kind of like a bar in our house. And I'm looking at this, and my wife is there, and my daughter is there. And I'm like, wait a second. I made a promise today. My wife and daughter need to make that same promise. You know what? So does my whole family. So my son was upstairs, my youngest. I've got 2 kids that still live at home. My other kids have moved on. Well, they're still part of our family, but they're not in our home anymore. And so I called down my younger son. I'm like, hey, buddy, you need to come down. He was upstairs. He came down, and he had one of his friends that was with him as well, one of his best buddies. And I didn't care. We were doing Promise to Live, even with the friend. So I told him all what it was. I showed him the coin, and I made him do a verbal, out loud promise to live. We all did it together right there in the kitchen. So as we talk about these things that are sometimes hard to talk about, but we all know are worth talking about, that's why we're here. My challenge to each of you is, we've talked about you all getting a hug, and Brandy mentioned getting a second one. My challenge to you is, before the end of the week, to at least have 2 other people that you've been able to get them to make the promise as well. And I don't think you'll find that it's that hard, really. It's pretty simple to say, hey, I went to this thing the other day. It was really cool. And one of the things they talked about was this Promise to Live thing, and here's what it means. And it's not really complicated, as Brandy explained. It's like, I promise that when things get hard and dark and sad or depressed, I promise to live. And I'm going to seek resources and help to make sure that I do that. So that was my challenge for you. It will pay off. I can tell you right now, when I have the opportunity to help someone that might be struggling, it feels good. And it feels good when we're talking to our friends or our family and we're encouraging them to make the promise to live. So with that, thank you, and I appreciate you letting me come spend some time with you today.
Wow. That was pretty good. Who learned something new today? Great. I'm going to take your challenge right now. Since we did this, will you guys, if you're willing, raise up your hand with me and make the promise to live? Say, I promise that if I find myself in a dark place, that I will reach out to someone. And that I will find a resource. Or call or text 988. Okay, now everybody look me in the eye. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. We're all making this commitment. Thank you guys for making the promise to live. This is so critical. We need you. The world needs you. There's only one of you. And no matter what it is you're going through, you survived every single one of your worst days. But here's the thing. Would you have thought this orthodontist, who seemingly had this great life, would end it?
And the funny, not funny, but the interesting thing about that is my buddy told me, he says, I've got 3 brother-in-laws. The other 2 brother-in-laws I knew had struggles, and those were the 2 that I thought would have been the one. It was never the one that actually did.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know how many of you may have seen that ad that shows the 2 guys at the soccer game. And the one guy's cheering the whole time, and the other guy's just kind of sitting there and cheering. And then it's like, then the cheerful guy is gone. And it's like, check on your friends. They might be struggling. Here's the thing I know. Mental health, suicide, addiction, trauma does not discriminate. Young, old, rich, poor, black, white, doesn't matter. This is something, and I heard the numbers that really astonished me. In 2022 in Utah, the suicide rate went up 12%. I don't know what 23 stats are, but our mission is to get people to stay. There is hope, there is light, we've seen it, we're going to keep bringing it. Our next town hall is going to be May 16th, right here. And this next one, and I would just offer this as well. Sometimes these things are hard. You're talking about that car accident. I was the one at 15. I came upon an accident. I sat with this guy until he passed. This is why I got involved in Nobody Dies Alone. I volunteered at the hospital for 7 years sitting with people who were alone. We didn't come in alone, we shouldn't leave alone. And I sat with them. Why? Because when I was 15 years old and I was on the side of the road with a guy who had crashed in a motorcycle, and I'm trying to keep him comfortable and talking to him and holding his hand. And then I went out to the road and I begged for help. 15 years old, I stood there trying to wave down a car. Stop, stop, stop. Everybody drove by me. Probably 8 or 9 cars drove by me. I didn't have a cell phone to call. And I knew his life was slipping away. Finally, I stood in the middle of the road until somebody stopped. It was having that connection. I vowed at that moment, no matter what, I would always stop. I'm not a medic, but I'm a human. And sometimes all we need is connection. We need somebody there to hold our hand to tell us it's going to be okay. You're not alone. Sometimes we don't see the life slipping away. Sometimes we look at each other and we think it's great. Who can you reach out to today? Can we just take just a minute? Grab an extra pocket hug on the way. Just think for 10 seconds. Who should you reach out to today? Who can you call? A text is nice, but it's a text. Can we commit to be off of our phones today and look around wherever we travel, whether it be at home, to the grocery store, and look and notice somebody? And maybe if you have an extra pocket hug to give, just say, I felt like I should give you this today. I don't know if you're going through anything, but keep it up, like somebody loves you. Or just noticing people. I made it a habit at the airport. It sounds ridiculous. I do it every time now. It's kind of a fun game. I say, if we can hate for no reason, we can love for no reason. And I love you. And I love the people. And so I walk by them because we have energy. Our thoughts, our words matter. And so as I walk by people at the airport, I look at them, and in my mind, I literally say, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. As I'm passing and I'm looking at them, they're thinking, who's this weirdo? And I'm saying, I love you, I love you. I don't know if it makes a difference. I think it does. Because I'm practicing happiness, I'm practicing love. And I would encourage you to do that even to the people you think are on top of the world. So please mark your calendars for May 16th. That's our next event here. We're going to be talking with survivors. We're going to be talking with Jennifer Morris. She lost her mother at 5 years old. She's written a book to help children. We're going to be talking to Cause Green, who survived a suicide attempt and goes on and helps a lot of people. We'll be talking with Gaynell Lynn Condi. If you guys know her, she lost her sister. And we would put a warning on there, and I would say this. So when you were talking about that, I know there's people in here who've lost loved ones in tragic ways, whether it be through suicide or homicide or car accident, overdose or addiction. And Dr. Morgan here is available if anyone's feeling a little bit heavy right now, and maybe you want to pull him aside before you leave. We do have a doctor here, and we will have one next month as well. There's a few other things coming up. Mark your calendars for August 24th. We're going to be out at the Utah Motorsports Complex. We're doing a race to save. We're going to have race car rides with supercars and supercar drivers and food trucks, live music, all kinds of stuff. Free family event to get us together to connect. That's August 24th, Saturday, August 24th. So mark your calendar for that, because this will be open to everybody. We want 100,000 people there. I mean, the more the merrier. Let's get together, let's connect, let's have a great time. You can purchase rides in a race car. We'll have the monster truck there, but we're gonna have music and entertainment, food trucks, all kinds of stuff. And connection really is important. It's important for us to get out and to see people and to feel their energy and their love. So that's for our partners with Automotive Addiction. We're thankful for them for helping sponsor this event. If any of you want to get involved in what we do with Promise2Live, please let us know. And we are building our resources, vetted resources and treatments. We want partners. We want to save lives. It's all, for me, it's about impact over ego. We have no ego here. Let's synergize let's create this collaborative community and save lives together. If you have additional questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap up now, but you're welcome to come up and to ask us independently. Thank you so much for coming today. We appreciate it.